Can trans women experience premenstrual vocal syndrome? Let's talk about it. Hi friends, it's Dr. C, your favorite hormonal SLP. I'm a certified and licensed speech language pathologist, and I got my PhD in evaluating how hormones affect the voice. I also happen to be part of the trans community, so I'm the perfect person to answer this question: can trans women experience premenstrual vocal syndrome? Really quick, this video is for trans women, trans femmes, and people who love and support trans women and trans femmes. So if that's not you, bye! We'll wait. Before we get started, let's talk about why some trans women and trans femmes decide to take progesterone as part of their hormone replacement therapy. Because if you look at WPATH guidelines, there really isn't a lot of information about progesterone and trans feminine HRT. In fact, they say, although there's anecdotal evidence to suggest that progesterone does improve breast development and mood, the potential benefits don't necessarily outweigh the potential risks. When I read that, I was like, what are these risks? So I looked into the 2019 study. I was a little disappointed to see that it's just an expert opinion, which if you look at the levels of evidence for science, expert opinions are on the bottom of the pyramid. In fact, this expert opinion is in direct opposition to another expert opinion by Dr. Pryor. Essentially, this expert opinion says that there are potential risks based on studies about looking at progestins in post-menopausal cis women. However, the other expert opinion points out that a lot of these potential risks are not necessarily valid when evaluating how hormones affect the trans community. I'll post both expert opinions in the description below so that you can read both and understand the two differing opinions. Dr. Pryor's letter, An Expert Opinion, outlines 6 important ways that progesterone can affect trans women. First, it results in more rapid feminization. Second, it decreases testosterone. Third, it helps with breast development. Fourth, it helps with bone formation. 5, it can help improve sleep. And 6, it can be helpful for heart and vein health. These are some pretty amazing benefits if we find that they're true. But again, both of these studies are expert opinions. We currently do not have any randomized control trials looking at how progesterone affects trans women's health. There is a group in Amsterdam who just completed a randomized control trial, and I'm hopeful that we'll see the results of that study in this next year. In the United States, we're not going to get that study. The NIH, the National Institutes of Health, made a statement to say that they're really not interested in investigating how gender-affirming healthcare improves the lives of trans individuals. Instead, they only want to investigate how gender-affirming healthcare may harm these individuals. This is infuriating, but this means that we're not going to have randomized control trials in the United States anytime soon. I'll link that letter in the description below. There is a retrospective study that was conducted in the United States that I would like to outline. In this study, they asked, why do trans women and trans femmes want to start progesterone therapy? And what they found was that there are several reasons why progesterone is often added to hormone replacement therapy. Looking at this graph, we can see that most individuals wanted to start progesterone to improve breast development, mimic hormonal patterns of AFAB adults, increase their femininity, and then a smaller percentage wanted to improve mood, libido, sleep, lower their testosterone levels. Some people wanted to start because they knew that it worked for others, and then some wanted to start progesterone to hopefully improve their memory. So that's why some people may start progesterone. Now, did that exactly result in the desired outcomes? The study goes on to say that many of the individuals who started progesterone did see an improvement in breast development and an improved sense of femininity. And over half of people who started progesterone noted an improvement in mood. But not all of the reasons somebody started progesterone resulted in the desired outcomes, such as the improvement in memory wasn't often reported. We need a lot more research in gender affirming healthcare. However, we all know that there's a lot of obstacles in our way. While again, this is very infuriating, the one thing I will say about the trans community is that we're resilient. And we also love to share information with each other. Now that we know why somebody might start progesterone, let's talk about how progesterone can affect the voice. Specifically, what is this thing about premenstrual vocal syndrome? Okay, so first, really quick, let's talk about the menstrual cycle and AFAB individuals. One way of talking about the menstrual cycle is by dividing it into 3 stages: the follicular stage, ovulation, and the luteal stage. Estrogen and progesterone will peak and decline at different parts of the menstrual cycle. Typically, estrogen will peak right before ovulation, decline, have a small rise in the luteal stage, and then drop rapidly. Whereas progesterone will peak during the luteal stage and then drop rapidly if pregnancy doesn't occur. The reason why the premenstrual part of the menstrual cycle sucks so bad is because of these fluctuating hormones, and particularly the dramatic loss or decline of hormones right before menses. Generally speaking, in the voice world, an oversimplification that we can talk about in terms of hormones and voice is that estrogen levels, when they're higher, are associated with good vocal quality. Progesterone, on the other hand, is a little iffy. I want to summarize my favorite study on premenstrual vocal syndrome. And honestly, there's only one really good study, in my opinion, talking about this syndrome. And it's all the way back in 1999. I'll link the article in the description below. This study points out that in the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle, progesterone is relatively high and estrogen is relatively low. The high progesterone can lead to these premenstrual vocal symptoms that we'll talk about now. First, progesterone affects the spit that lubricates the vocal folds by making it stickier and more acidic. This, in combination with the increased reflux associated with high progesterone, can really irritate the voice. When they looked at the vocal folds, there were some obvious symptoms as well. The vocal folds were more swollen, more congested, had more surface level veins, and decreased vocal fold amplitude and symmetry of vibration. This typically results in 4 primary symptoms: vocal fatigue, decreased power, decreased range, and a change in vocal quality, with the authors describing vocal quality as huskier and more metallic. So overall, this may impact some people's ability to complete their jobs, such as singers. It also creates an environment where a voice disorder is more likely to occur. One thing to remember is that hormones don't affect everybody's voices in the same way. The authors of this study suggest that up to 1/3 of women could experience premenstrual vocal syndrome, but that means 2/3 of women don't. So progesterone isn't automatically going to affect your voice in these negative ways. So can trans women experience premenstrual vocal syndrome? The answer is yes. If their hormonal profile is similar to the profile of the women in this study, chances are they could experience premenstrual vocal syndrome. So what do we do to keep our voices healthy? Well, you may have guessed, start with water. Adequate hydration is really important to keep those vocal folds healthy. Second, try to increase the surface level hydration of those vocal folds by either incorporating a humidifier at night or using a nebulizer. Both of those things will add moisture to the air and allow your vocal folds to have greater surface level hydration. The one thing to remember is always use sterile water. Whether you're using a humidifier or a nebulizer, it's really important that you use sterile water and not water from your tap. Another thing you can consider is giving your voice a break, especially at night when it's tired. We do not need to sing the car karaoke Celine Dion song when our voice is tired and vulnerable. So let's save that when progesterone maybe is a little bit lower or estrogen is a little bit higher. Certain trans women and trans femmes may be more susceptible to experiencing premenstrual vocal syndrome. Those of you who are on estradiol injections but are taking progesterone orally may experience some fluctuations in estradiol, while progesterone will be maintained relatively high. This means that right before your next injection, you might experience some of these premenstrual vocal symptoms. It's something to look out for. Again, there are many beautiful effects that progesterone can have in terms of feminization. But it is something to consider, especially if you're noticing that your voice is changing when you start or stop progesterone. I hope you found this video really helpful in terms of understanding how progesterone may affect the voice, how to keep your voice healthy, or maybe experience a little bit of trans joy while watching this video. Make sure you take care of your voice, especially when it's vulnerable. And if you want a deep dive on how estrogen affects the voice, let me know in the comments below. I would really love to hear from the trans community. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!